Hi, Michael here. Welcome to the Wiggly Podcast, episode 187. The Wiggly sofa is completely unoccupied today, and although I like to try and stay behind the microphone, and given that I put the microphones out in the first place, I don't find that too difficult to do normally. But Heather and Rachel are away in Korea. Farmer Phil called away on farm business. Rachel Harries is working her socks off in the Wiggly office, and Richard, well, we're not quite sure where Richard is, but he certainly isn't here. So, cometh the hour, cometh the man. But of course, one thing you can always rely on, Monty's here.
The Montycast, a weekly fact on wiggliness. A mango wurzel used to be the most popular treat for sheep in Herefordshire. Another Montycast next week on the Wiggly Podcast.
Thank you, Monty. Now, this week's Wiggly Podcast may be somewhat different, but so will next week's. Next week in the Wiggly office is a really hectic time. So I'm going to take this opportunity to bring you the best of the recordings made by Richard and Rachel Harries as they talk to people who dropped in on the Wiggly Garden at the Hay Festival. In the next two shows, we've got piracy on the high seas, we've got garden photography, we've got atmospheric physicist on eco-energy, we've got a man who's mad keen on hedgehogs, we have gypsy caravans, and we even have a little bit of celebrity spotting when Mariella Frost drops by. But first, we're going back to episode 183, when the bees in the Wiggly beehive swarmed, split into two groups, and Hannah coaxed one into a new beehive. Here's the story, as recorded by Richard and Heather.
We can hear those bees buzzing away. Thick. They've congregated into a tight triangle just on one of the legs and around the entrance of the hive. Michael's there clicking away, taking some photographs and being very brave because he's about a yard away from the hive. And Hannah's just getting herself adorned in an amazing beekeeping suit, which unfortunately I don't seem to have. So I'm keeping my distance, and Hannah assures me that she'll let me know as best she can if they're likely to leap and start stinging me. This is why it's important to have a queen that's fairly docile. So Hannah's brought down the nuke box, and she's wrapped one of Heather's best sheets around a forestry box, and she's now just gone up to the hive and with a white tub truck, and she's quite actually going to negotiate the. This is an interesting situation. I feel as though I shouldn't really be here, but Michael is even closer than me. She's scraping. Oh, I'm going to back off because they're just. So I'm back right away now. I've been chased by bees. There's quite literally a bee chasing me, so I'm staying well away. Michael seems to have been stung, but anyway, so I'm going to move across to the other side of the garden. Michael's now taking a photograph of me as I was watching a honeybee just landed on my fleece, and it was plugging away at my fleece, stinging my jacket like mad. Obviously, not getting through the fleece into my arm, which was fortunate. But I thought, no, it's definitely time to leave. Yeah, looking across there now, and Hannah's managed to empty all the bees that she scraped from the front of the hive onto the white sheet. And it's an amazing thing, you know, they just sit there. They sit on that white sheet, and they seem as though they just don't seem independent. It's as if they're as one. So Hannah should quickly run across to the. She must have got the queen now, because she's just emptied the queen at the front of the, and she's now pointing. Michael's clicking away. Brave man. She's now pointing at this animal, which must be the queen. I've come back. I'm snuck back under radar because it seems that Heather is brave enough to come back also, so I'm not going to be outdone by
the queen
on the
bee
bravery
with
stakes.
Yeah, you chicken. See that queen?
I can see the
so
queen,
she's
yeah.
being enticed in that hole, Hannah said, by those other mates.
Right,
But the queen has to make her own way in there.
right.
I think we should give her a shove.
Flick it in there.
Flick it in there, for Christ's sake. No, life's too short. We've been waiting here for hours. Anyway, here she goes. She's going in.
She's going in. That's amazing.
Oh my God, she's
That is
gone
amazing.
in.
So the queen, so Hannah scraped off this melee of bees from the front of the hive, placed the queen.
That'd be in my hair, Rich.
Well, I
One
think
just went up my nose.
I think given the population density of bees around us, if there is an insect in your hair, it's probably going to be a bee.
Yeah, good point.
This takes us back to the hornet days, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, before last.
Do you my fleece? Why are we all stood here closer than Hannah to the bees?
I'm not
And Hannah's in a full spec suit.
not sure exactly.
And we haven't.
Not
And
sure.
Michael's even closer. Oh God! Don't hit it.
I'm not
'cause
going
it
to
could kill it.
I'm just going to back off a little bit.
Right, off on off
It
now.
just seems that you get
Ready,
one
ready?
or two that are just a little bit. It does keep landing in your hair, so let's back right off. Anyway, I think it's no. Has it lost interest? No, it's lost interest. You're all right, Hev.
Right.
It's gone back.
It's my
It just seems that you get the odd, slightly aggressive character that wants to kind of chase you away from the.
I'm allergic to bee sting.
Are you? So you don't want to get stung? Oh, that's not a good idea. I don't want you going into anaphylactic shock, having to run you off to Hereford casualty.
No, I've got to go. Good Lord.
That's a brilliant thing to be part of, though, isn't it, today?
It's a fantastic experience.
And essentially, you're going to have 2 hives in your garden now.
It's great, isn't it?
It is really good. So there's a good chance of being able to harvest a whole world of tasty honey this year.
So is that automatic success now, or?
I think it probably is. Yeah, I think it probably is. I mean, Hannah's obviously the expert, but she seems to be
Hannah,
beaming
our
away
hero.
inside that mask.
So, Han, is that it? We made it. Have
Well,
we given birth to a new hive?
Not necessarily. She's gone in to have a look round, and if she doesn't like it, she'll be back out again, and
Right.
they'll all disappear. But hopefully, she'll call the rest of them in, and we'll have a successful.
That
nuke
hive
box.
you put there doesn't look a mucher.
No, it's just a nuke box. So it's a miniature hive,
Right.
just to keep your swarm in, really.
And what, you happen to have that on you, did you?
Yes.
You carry around that box?
This time of year.
Here, ready for this moment?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
Just in
That's-
case.
I must put one in my car, Rich.
Forward thinking.
Just in
Gotta be
case.
said, that's right. Just going to throw on
What
your
else have you
beekeeping
got?
suit.
I've
What's
got
in your handbag, for example? Yes, I happen to have a bee box on me. Yeah, anything else?
a smoker and a bee suit and that sort of thing.
Good Lord above.
Han, what will keep the queen in there then?
Who can tell? It's a woman, isn't it?
Well, that's
It's a nice view.
no, it's
or
an interesting,
Yeah.
interesting
good
point you make.
kitchen,
Yeah.
or-
Maybe the magnolia tree
Yeah.
outside. Yeah.
Fabulous. So we can only wait now.
Yeah, it's waiting now to see what happens.
And my sheet, what part did that play?
The white sheet, for some reason, they're attracted to that.
I see.
So they're attracted and they should go up then.
It's a fitted sheet.
Yeah, that makes all the difference. I
Brilliant.
think.
That's
Yeah.
really good. Rian was very excited to hear what's going on with her sheets. Out of the
I'm glad it was
drawer.
a clean one.
Good Lord.
OK, for the rest of the show and next week's, we're off to the Hay Festival. So where exactly are you, Richard?
We're stood on the decking of the entrance to the euphemistically called Talks Pavilion on the Wiggly Garden on what is one of the most beautiful days of the year, certainly. So I'm feeling decidedly lucky, not just because of the weather, but because I've been joined by Juliet Roberts. I've been prompted to say the right thing, and the ever lovely Sorrel Everton from Gardens Illustrated.
Hello.
Have I got that right?
Yes, you did. Yeah. Not the Gardeners Illustrated,
Yeah,
the
no.
Gardens Illustrated.
Indeed, and it's a fantastic magazine and something
Thank
that
you.
I think Wiggly's has kind of done features and offers and things for in the past. you guys have been kind enough to come along and talk to me and give me some of your expert opinions of the landmass that lies before us. So, but before we just have a wander around the garden, what brought you to Hay originally?
I've been coming to Hay for years, and it's amazing to see how the event has changed literally from a flapping tent in a field to what we see today, which I think is just extraordinary, and the number of people wandering around. It's really nice to see the Wiggly permanent garden here. I think that's fantastic. But we're here primarily with the magazine this year because we sponsored 2 talks. We had a talk yesterday, which was last night, and it was Noel Kingsbury, Tim Richardson, Dan Pearson and Simon Jenkins, who were talking about the 21st century garden, and they were discussing whether it was a place of beauty or a home for woodlice.
Okay.
We can talk more about that later.
Yes,
as we go around the garden.
See, and, the all bit I don't quite understand, because that throws a spanner in the works as far as. And in fact, when we exchanged emails earlier, I seem to remember I replied to you after you'd sent me the name of the event that you were coming to, and said, "What do you mean, a place of beauty or a place of woodlice?" Because in my mind, they amount to the same thing.
Well, I think that came out in the talk, really.
Right,
but yeah, maybe.
And it went very well, I hear.
Yeah, it did.
It
was good, and it was a discussion-based event, and everyone got a chance to speak. Lots of questions afterwards.
Yeah.
So you were both on the stage? Both?
No, we were in the audience. We were kind of handing out magazines and just kind of getting the feel of the audience. But it was really good. I think it was a lively debate, and lots of different opinions came across. And at the end of the day, we don't know how gardens are going to evolve. They reflect the zeitgeist of society to quite a large extent. But there is a huge interest in wildlife, a huge interest in being more ecological and tapping into the sort of sense of place, which I think you've done brilliantly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, should we go and have a look and see what we've achieved? Because as you know, the garden is here for 5 years and possibly more. I mean, I don't know whether the Hay Festival guys will say after 5 years you have to rip it all up and off you go. But we shall see. But
so when did you begin? When did the garden?
It's been about 14 months. Yeah, so we only started because we only had the green lights to put the garden in just before the beginning of the festival last year. So it was a real rush to get it in. But what we were able to do is put in a lot of the wildflower turf and obviously this cobbled area that is interspersed with raised beds that we're stood on now. Yeah.
And so that the farmer has strict instructions not to touch this for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Well, what happens is I come out probably after all the marquees have been taken down, and I put a stop-proof fencing around the garden, and it sits here. Yeah. And then when I came out and the willow bowers, I did in fact just before Christmas and New Year last year. And then Jodie and Pip and Adi came out, and we all had a bit of a concerted effort putting in this chamomile bund. Yeah. And Jodie and Heather planted up all these wonderful wellies with tomatoes and lettuces and brassicas and all sorts of goodies. So they're quite nice, aren't they?
Oh, I think it's really sweet. It's really charming. It's really pretty.
And it's very engaging. I mean, there's lots of people walking through, stopping, looking at all the informative signs that you've got that are quite fun and informative, and just really, I think, engaging. And kids playing in the willow huts.
Oh, the willow huts are just magical. When I was a kid, that would have been my idea of heaven. And I noticed one of the adults is crawled out of one as well, so it's not just for children.
Well, Heather and I got in there together, in fact, and we did some filming just before the festival started. Yeah, just to say, well, it's okay for Heather. She doesn't really even have to bend over to go in there. Saying that. But yeah, they've been a real hit, and I just think it's wonderful that we've got the weather for them to be enjoyed to the extent that they were enjoyed. I mean, yesterday
it couldn't be better, could it? It's perfect.
Yesterday there were kids milling around in there. There were kids having sword fights on the bund. There were mothers breastfeeding in the Talks Pavilion. I just thought it was just wonderful because it just epitomises what natural garden's all about, really.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting. We obviously were at Chelsea Flower Show earlier this week, and you can forget. I mean, the gardens are extraordinary and they're works of art in their own right. But walking around there, you can forget that gardens are places for people to just have leisure time in, and for kids to enjoy. And I think that's what you get re-engaged with when you're here. Yeah, you get reminded.
Precisely.
But what's really important, I think, is what this garden reflects is this current zeitgeist for Grow Your Own, which is massive. I mean, it's really has kind of gripped the nation.
I think you're right.
And trying to get children involved in gardening at quite an early age, and you can't kind of you can't force kids to do stuff like that, but getting them sort of engaged with the natural environment and respectful of nature and having fun just seeing things grow, I think they absorb it and hopefully that'll come out when they have their own plots of their own. And
precisely. I often reflect back to when I was sort of telling stories and talks and things like that. I often draw on some of my childhood experiences.
Yes, me too.
And some of those are quite vivid. And you must take what you kind of grow up with you into later life. I mean, subconsciously sometimes.
I don't think you often realise it. I mean, I often think back. I think it's only as I get older that I realise that when I was a kid, my grandparents were really obsessed with gardening. My dad had an allotment and he used to drag me along there, unwillingly, but I kind of did my bit, and we had a lovely plot at home, and I remember doing sweet peas and all of those things, the scents and just seeing things grow. I remember going into my dad's glass house and there was tomatoes, and he sort of taught me how to kind of snap off the side shoots. And at the time you just do it and you don't think, but now I think that was hugely important and influential.
You're probably right. Which is possibly why you've aspired to the dizzy heights of editor of one of the nicest gardening,
thank you.
possibly even the nicest gardening magazine that there is.
Well, it's a lovely magazine to work on, and we thoroughly enjoy ourselves. So it's all right.
It is wonderful. And what about chickens? I mean, have you guys got hens at home? Or?
Haven't been, but I aspire to.
We used to
very
as
much
children.
So.
We had chickens as, I mean, even now hen houses are such nice things, aren't they?
Yes, they're really cool.
They are.
We've just had a really beautiful one in the magazine. Actually, we did a whole we did these shopping pages, and we did about the sort of grow your own and keeping hens and things. And it's just so many people are doing it now, and it's so easy. But it's one of those sort of, I don't know, my grandparents did, but we kind of forgot it in the sort of 60s and 70s.
And the old pest control as well, if you don't mind plants getting sort of nibbled and pecked at.
Yeah, they do. They definitely feast on slugs and snails, in fact. And I think you tend to find that certain birds, according to their personality, have a real liking to certain types of molluscs. One chicken will ignore the slug, whereas this chum will think, that's for
that's
me.
A juicy
Yeah,
not my flavour.
No, that's right, yeah. Yeah, so
had one of those yesterday. Or you have that one.
Sick to death of those.
Well, certainly in my garden, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah. But along with the grow your own, I mean, the rise in popularity of wildlife gardening. I mean, we've seen that over the past 10, 15 years, and I think the talk. You mentioned the talk we had yesterday, and people did used to think of wildlife gardens as being quite scruffy places, and I think our perceptions have changed of that, and we like things a little bit rough around the edges and more naturalistic. It's not all kind of primped and preened and immaculate kind of bedding displays, and I think the two things have kind of come together. It's sort of like this looseness of approach and seeing the beauty in nature and seeing the beauty in seed heads, and that ties in with encouraging more wildlife. So I think it's great how those kind of two aspects have come together.
And that came out in the talk as well, that talking about Chelsea again, it's almost given as read now that gardens have to be sustainable. That they have to use recycled material, they have to think about the irrigation and the water harvesting, and all that's given as read, even in a sort of immaculately designed garden. But yes, we are seeing this sort of raggedness, as Juliet said, that people don't mind having, and even if it's the tiniest patch of grass in the garden that they just don't mow for the summer, then even that makes a contribution.
Makes a massive difference, I think.
It does. And I think it's that
scheme of things.
That juxtaposition of, I mean, I've seen a number of people who've got a sort of, they've left a grassy area and they've mown around it quite neatly, and that juxtaposition of the quite trim and obviously cared for with the wild, and I think that kind of creates an interesting dynamic. And it's not just all kind of everything's a bit wild, it's sort of, there's some formalness, there's some formality to the garden, whether it's just a beautifully mown path through a wildflower meadow. And I think that we're definitely seeing a lot more images and gardens that are doing that type of thing.
Well, there's a great example in our current issue, in our June issue, of a garden in Kent called Chainhurst, which is sort of a modern or contemporary take on a cottage garden. Really beautiful, lovely flower beds, vegetable beds and everything, but she's just left this very simple square patch of grass that she doesn't mow, and she just lets all the flowers come up and everything, and the sort of juxtaposition of the neatness of that and then the wildness of that, of the little unmown patch of grass, is fantastic. And
it's fantastic.
It really makes the garden have a bit of character and a bit of life to it.
Indeed. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much, both. How can the listener get a copy of Gardens Illustrated?
Well, it's available in most good magazine stores, W.H. Smith's and Waitrose, and
there's a website worth a visit.
There's a website, www.gardensillustrated.com, and you can get subscriptions there.
And can you get tasters of sort of contents of articles?
You do. There's a sort of little slide through, because we have the most beautiful photography. You can have a little kind of preview of what's in the current issue.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, now a bit of a treat. celebrity, glamour, the poise of a seasoned media professional, widely regarded as having the perfect voice. Yes, it's Richard again, and this time he meets Mariella Frostrup.
Okay, well, it's a very different day to yesterday. Quite a lovely day, in fact, and getting lovelier. And interestingly enough, I've been joined by the ever-lovely Mariella Frostrup. And it's lovely to meet you, and you've given us the opportunity to chat with you for a few moments before you go off and spend some time with your kiddies, because I think you're very busy, aren't you, here?
Yeah, it's been quite busy. We're with a show every day, so sort of most of it's taken up with either filming or reading. In fact, when people say, are you enjoying the festival, I don't really know what to say, because I haven't really seen the festival. The closest I've got to it is really just a quick wander through Wiggly Wigglers
That's good though, isn't it?
of a morning, which is always very nice.
Yeah, that's fine.
And was actually quite inspirational to me last year, because I went off back up to Scotland, where we have a house, and sent off for your meadow seed. Though we didn't it was too late to plant it last year, actually. We had a lot of builders' rubble and stuff, so we waited and planted it this spring, and we're about to go back up and see what's taken root and what hasn't.
It'll be something to look forward to then. The children will love it.
I also, unfortunately, bought one of those bird tables, which are absolutely beautiful. Look slightly like they've come from outer space, but are not built for the high winds of the bleak Ayrshire hills in which we reside. It lasted about a week. The top blew off, and then I found out that replacing the glass, as you probably know, is as expensive as the bird table, as the bird seat table itself. Not one of my best purchases. I do quite like the water bath, though.
It's quite nice, isn't it? And perhaps you should take that back as recompense when you went back up to Ayrshire.
I wasn't looking for a freebie, Richard, but now that you mention it.
I think you should. I'd be more than happy for you to do that.
You've also given me inspiration as to what to do with that. We seem to have a problem up there in the same way as lots of people have with socks, which I also have with socks, where you find two go into the washing machine and one comes out.
Yeah.
And here you've got all these wellies with things growing in them. Yeah. And we have the same issue with wellies up in Scotland. We leave a pair, and when we come back there's a left foot or a right foot, and its sort of sister or brother is nowhere to be found. So
there's a world of wellies to do stuff like that.
World of wellies to be planted.
That's great. Okay, well that was wonderful. We did do a little wellie planting thing yesterday, so your children will be more than happy to do something like that when they get home.
Yeah, well, you seem to keep later hours than my children, Richard. My children are here at about 6:05 waiting for you eagerly with their plastic bottles for their wormery, and you stroll in at lunchtime. It's just not much good. Don't ever set yourself up as a childminder, will you?
I won't. No, I'll bet I mind. I won't. Okay. Well, I think on that note, I think we should perhaps leave it. I'll let you get back to your children. But are you going to? So you're going to stay, and then what will you do when you get back to Scotland? Will you email me to let me know what type of flowers you've got coming up in your meadow?
I will, absolutely. And if it's looking good, or in fact, if it's either looking very good or very bad, I'll take a photograph of it and send that to you too.
Right. Well, I'm really hoping that it looks really good.
I'm looking forward to the bird table, drinking table.
Indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our final piece for this week's show, Rachel Harries with Hugh Peachy, Gypsy Caravan Restorer. What other podcast could bring you bees, glossy magazines, celebrities and gypsy caravans?
And I'm here at Hay Festival with Hugh Peachy, who is a wheelwright.
Well, a wheelwright and a gypsy caravan restorer. I'm sort of learning to become a wheelwright as I go. I've had some. I've done a course and I'm learning how to do it. I've done it about 3 years, and it takes a long time to kind of get it right. It's practice. So I'm practicing on my own wagons really at the moment, and then commission should come in hopefully for new wheels for all sorts of other people as well. So
good. And so we're stood here in the middle of the festival site in front of this fabulous gypsy caravan that you're going to tell me all about.
Well, this is quite an unusual one. It's probably dated about 1920, but with most gypsy caravans it's quite difficult to authenticate them really. The only things you've got, well, the two things you need to look out for on a gypsy caravan is on each axle you've got a big nut that holds the wheel on, and on top of those, on the outside of those, you've got a grease cap, and normally on the grease caps you've got the maker's name or the builder's name, but sometimes they get swapped round, so that's one way of deciding who might have made it, where it might have come from, because there are famous builders in different parts of the country. And the other way of dating them is there's supposed to be a date on the axle. Somewhere, if you take the paint off, you'll see the date on the axles. But I've actually yet to find a date on an axle, but it's supposed to be there somewhere. So people can tell lots of stories, but this looks to me...
So do you have an idea of where this one came from?
Well, the decoration is probably anything that gives it away. You've got on the sides and all around the front, you've got heavily carved decorations of fruit, grapes, and camp sort of scenes with fires. And it's very unusual. It's very heavily carved. It's very bold sort of relief carving. And it may be local because there was a lot of fruit picking and that sort of thing. Maybe this sort of side of the country. So maybe it could be local.
Well, we're looking at the underneath of it here, and there's
all the bits underneath are called the undercarriages, or the unders for short. And basically they're all you're trying to create a structure that's strong, and so to lighten the load, lighten the weight of the caravan, they take all the chamfers and all the little shavings off, so you still got the section, but it's decorated. That gives an opportunity to decorate. So you're taking the weight off by shaving bits out, and then you paint them and decorate them. And this one's fairly crude. It's not. You can some are incredibly ornate, obviously down to the skill of the builder or the amount of time he's got, or what happens the customer wants to pay as well. But they're all of a very similar construction. You've got fixed rear axle, and the front axle is on a turntable, so that's where the shafts are attached to for the pony to back up to, and then you tow it around, and they turn incredibly easily. So
essentially, this is the steering.
Yeah,
this is like how it steers.
Yeah, you've got two round metal plates, and it just twists on those. You grease them up, and it just twists on those. You've got a single bolt going through the floor. It just pivots on there.
And so it has a sort of domed canvas.
Yeah, the canvas.
Roof.
Well, there's different types of gypsy caravans. You've got the most basic ones, which are called open lots, and they're essentially a flat cart that's had a bow top, which is the canvas dome sort of roof put on top of it, and they've all got a hard back to them, like a fixed back wall, a rear wall is timber. Yeah.
Should we go and have a look around the back?
And most of them have shutters, or because on an open lot you've got a solid rear wall for the caravan, and on the front is a canvas curtain rather than a door. And on the back you normally have shutters that open on the back, but some of them they have like little bay windows, and the idea was, I'm told, that if you've got your animals outside, when you wake up in the morning, if you've got a bay window, you can look out and you can look further round than you can. If it doesn't open, if you haven't got anything that opens, so the bay window you can just sort of see out quickly and see more what's happening.
Yeah, keeping an eye on your animals. Isn't that wonderful? That's lovely.
This one's a bow top, and that means it's got a solid front to it with a door, a lockable door. And then you've got Reddings and Burtons, and they're all different. They haven't got canvas roofs; they're solid roofs with sort of a different shape, a different type. But this one's been painted sort of incorrectly. It's
peeling.
The paint's coming off, and the colour underneath is the traditional colours. They're sort of purples and orange. Well, purples and blues and reds, but it's pale green with. And it's the owner's choice really to paint it that colour. But I mean, it looks very pretty, but it's not technically correct.
It's a sort of pale green, isn't it? Rather a lurid pale green. I think I would prefer it if it was red, a deep red.
Yeah, purple. I mean, a lot of purple.
Purple. So there would have been, in their heyday, there would have been hundreds or thousands of these, would there, in England?
Yeah, and constantly changing hands and being built, and most of them are designed to be made by the side of the road, really. So a lot of them are, individuals, owners who had them for a long time, and they've been the same family. Or they'd sit by the roadside, and they literally would change them and fiddle around with them and paint them and decorate them and carve them, and so they all are very different and very, each owner can customise them in a way. But they're all of a very similar size and a very similar heights, and so there are sort of 5 or probably 4 or 5 standard sort of, not designs but standard types. If you're building them, you really need to stick to a few basic principles. There's nothing wrong with making a kind of modern interpretation of one, but it won't have the value that you can have if you've got a traditionally, much more traditionally made one. But there is still quite a good trade. This one here is probably, this one's worth, it's for sale.
I wanted to ask.
It's £9,500 as it is.
Goodness.
And if it's restored, it's £15,000. But you can buy them for £3,000 or £4,000, but it won't have wooden wheels.
Yes.
It'll be on artillery rubber wheels, which is not traditional, but they've been changed because the wooden wheels rot, and you're looking at £2,500 to repair, a set of wheels. So we'll make a new pair, so a new set rather.
Now, you were saying yesterday about how long these wooden wheels last.
Yeah,
if you put a new set
they should.
on?
Well, they should last. Depends how they're used, because most of them are ornament in people's gardens, so they get rolled out in the summer, and they get a bit of wet, and then they get put back in the barn, and they come out again, and the wheels don't get greased. They sit on one position all the time. All the weight's going through one side, so they tend to get loose.
Yes.
And the iron tyres slip, and the iron band around the outside. So if they're used constantly, the weight is spread around evenly, and they generally just get cleaned or maintained, and you if you're using it on a day-to-day basis, what's happening. It's like a car, I suppose. I mean, there's not much maintenance, but they do all rot in the same places. The canvas goes, and but the canvas is just put on. You put on a load of a set of hoops, a set of bows, which you just fix to
metal.
Well, they're wooden. I mean, you can use, I think, ash. It should be ash, bent ash, steamed and bent round a shape, but people nowadays are using piranha pine, which is like a good quality pine, with very little, few knots in it, and then I've been told to soak them in the brook for 3 days before I do it, but I've never actually done that. They seem to bend all right with brute force, but it is amazing how they do just literally. You've got a 14-foot straight pole, you can bend it into...
And it's an amazing hoop, isn't it, over there? Yeah. There's lots of children. I really want to go in and have a look inside, but there's lots of rowdy children in there. They sound like they're having great fun.
Well,
so there are children inside, but no doubt we'll hear from them. But
the inside is fairly. There's a fairly traditional layout as well, because you've got the flat cart, which is the sort of flat bed, and then somebody came out of the cupboard.
There's a small child coming out of a cupboard in the caravan now. Hello. Someone else is now going in there. That's where the children sleep, obviously.
Yeah, the babies go in the cupboards. Or they can sleep on the floor in between, or underneath.
Underneath, perhaps, might be the best place for them.
In the summer, but you've got a bed that's 2 foot or 2'6" wide, and it pulls out and doubles in size. So it slides on these rails. You've got and the cupboard underneath is where you can put babies in, or you can slide children underneath. So in the daytime, you push the bed out of the way, and you've got seats on the side, and you've got cupboards, and normally every single nook and cranny is for storage.
It's a tiny little space, isn't it? I mean, what's the dimensions here?
They're about 9 foot long in total, and about 5 foot wide on the dray on the bed, and then they get about 6'5" on the on the where your head rests, on the barrel. So, but on the ones I'm building, I'm leaving the cupboards out on the sides just so you've got more room on the floor for extra bedding. If you want to sleep on the floor, you can get extra width. So.
Originally, how many horses would pull?
Well, one pony was enough mostly. And that's why they sort of keep the weight down.
And so I imagine now that you pull them behind.
A quad bike and a 4x4.
Really?
Yes.
So do you think there's a future for them?
Yeah,
do you think we'll become less
people
dependent on the car and all be driving around in one of these? I'd love one.
Well, when I grew up, I think my dad in the 70s there was a fuel shortage or fuel crisis. I grew up on a farm in Gloucestershire, and he bought the heavy horse shire horse and a flat cart to do some of the farm work with. They never actually used it on the farm, because these are practical space. You can stand up, you can sleep, you can, once you kind of get in and think, well, actually, there's plenty of room,
Yeah, so thanks.
Thank you.
Really, it's so beautiful, and it's just an amazing.
I'm relieved that someone else can sort of see what I can see, that they are great to live in, perhaps for a weekend, and hopefully I'm starting to sell them and make them, and hopefully have a sustainable business out of it.
Yep.
So.
Great, thanks very much, Hugh.
Thank
you.
It's
really, really good to meet you. Really nice to have a proper tour and be able to look around and find out more about how you build them. Let me just be quiet. I've been told I've got to be quiet for about 5 seconds before I press stop.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. That makes my life so much easier. Now, Richard, are you listening? Okay, that's it for this week. Join me again next week when we wrap up this selection of recordings from Hay with pirate fishing. That's one for Richard, obviously. Garden photography, green energy, and a favourite Wiggly Podcast topic, hedgehogs. Thanks for listening.